Good afternoon. We're so excited to see so many beautiful smiling faces here today. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate and learn about Andrea Brokenshire's beautiful quilt journey quilts. A couple of things before we get started. Has anybody ever never been here before? Y'all are OGs. You've all been here. So I just want to tell you a little brief history about the Texas Quilt Museum. It's constructed in a building that was built in 1893. Everything used in the construction of the building was taken from LaGrange or Fayette County, where we're seated. We have handmade and fired bricks. Some of them were fired outside, and some of them were fired in a kiln. If you notice the rock that was in the walls as you're coming in and over here in the corner, that actually was taken from the LaGrange City Hall building when they raised it to build a new one. It adds to the texture, visual texture of the building, as well as the history of our building, because it predates our 1893 structure. We are the home of the largest quilt research library in the Southwest. It boasts over 12,000 volumes available for, come on, you're not too late, you're just in time. For quilt research or inspiration, and it's also the home to our Cobalt Antique Textile exhibit, and we've recently opened a new research nook. So if you are doing any research, quilt research, give us a call, talk to Carrie, and let her know what you're interested in learning in. We'll pull all of your materials and make the most of your moments with us. In addition to what you're going to hear and learn about today with Andrea, we have the AQSG's 19th Century Blues, More Than Indigo, which hangs in this gallery, as well as in Gallery 3 we have traditional quilts that come from Diane Miller. Of course, the Quilt Museum store is at your disposal if you're looking to lighten your pocketbook so you don't have to drag it out the door. We're happy to help you with that. Christmas is coming and we've got a little something for everyone on your list, so please consider us in your gift giving. And 100% of your purchase supports the museum, so we appreciate you very much. And if you haven't had a chance to take a stroll outside our period garden in the Grandmother's Flower Garden outside, it is one of the very few period gardens in the state of Texas. Everything that is planted out there was indigenous to this area from 1890 to 1930. It's laid out like a quilt block, and it's just a beautiful little stroll. We've had a little bit of rain, so be warned that it might be a little messier than one might anticipate, but nonetheless it's still a beautiful little stroll, as well as the home to our 18-foot by 35-foot mural. A couple things happening. If you don't know this, we are offering TQM talks now, so we are traveling across Texas visiting with groups and quilt guilds to talk about quilting and sharing the magic of the Texas Quilt Museum. The current exhibit that you see is going to be hanging until December 20th. At that point, we will close for the holidays and maintenance, but we are still available for private tours for your groups. The next change out is on November. We'll begin on January 5th. And if you're interested in helping to see how the behind the scenes happens, you're welcome to come join us for that. It takes about a day and a half for us to get everything pulled down, packed up, and ready for transport, as well as getting all the new stuff up. So we're always looking for support and help with that. And if you're interested, just talk to Carrie. The next exhibit coming in 2026, we have the 2025 prize winners from the Houston International Quilt Festival. We also have some floral quilts coming to us from Denise Burkett of Australia. And then we're really excited to be sharing for the very first time a heritage collection coming to us from the National African American Quilt Guild. Also, we have a truck show and gallery talk coming up on January 17th with Santa James. She's talking about quilted weaving. She actually incorporates weaving and quilting together. And then we have a cello concert coming up on Valentine's Day. If you're interested in any more details about that, please feel free to ask anybody on staff, or you can check it all out on our events page on the website. Also, we've got information. We've got a couple of quilt raffles going on, and if you're interested in membership, you're welcome to join us here at the Texas Quilt Museum. In addition to a lovely goodie bag of wonderful things, you also get discounts in the store. You're first to know everything going on, and we just love you. Not that we don't love you any less if you're not a member, but it's wonderful to have the opportunity to get to know you better and have have you join us for more things. I don't want to waste any more time because I'm so excited to learn about the wonderful botanical quilts from Andrea Brokenshire. She has been such an asset to this exhibit this year. I think one of the most memorable comment I keep getting is, "Those are quilts." So it's been lovely to be able to showcase your beautiful work. And Andrea, thank you so much for coming and visiting us from Round Rock to share your artistry with us. Please help me welcome Andrea Brokenshire.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, actually, I'm Andrea. First I want to say thank you for driving all that and coming from wherever you have to come and spend the afternoon with me. It means a lot to have people want to know about what I do and just spend some time. And let me tell you how I'm going to kind of set up the day. I'm going to talk about my general background and purpose and stuff, but then we're going to go out and we're going to go out and do a little walkabout with the quilts, okay? But in between, we'll do like about a 5 to 10 minute break so that if anybody needs to use the facilities or whatever, just need to stretch your legs, then we'll do that. And I'll just start at one end because every single one of those quilts out there has a story. So I can tell you about that. And if you feel like you've had enough, it will not hurt my feelings at all if you just want to get up and go. But I just wanted to say thank you again for coming. I really appreciate it. I have been sewing for 60 years. I started learning to sew when I was 5 years old because I needed clothes, and I'm one of 6 kids, and 5 girls and a boy. And in order to have clothes, we had to learn to sew, which was never a chore to me. I loved going, and I found fabric and touching. Who pets fabric around here? You know? I mean, I would go to the fabric stores as a little kid and just pet the fabric and feel all the different textures, and I would imagine what I could make with that. But when I was really little, my mom only said I could only use woven cotton. So my earliest stuff was all in woven cotton, just regular like broadcloth type stuff. And I gravitated toward the flowers. Big color. I love color. My sisters all went to like navies and browns and stuff, and I went to the big, remember that in the 60s they had the daisies, the big flower card? Okay, I love that. And so when I found this fabric, I said, okay, it was a reminder of that. So this jacket I made in remembrance of that child in me who loved flowers. And obviously, I never lost it because as my other sisters looked at sewing and making clothing as drudgery, I always looked at it as an opportunity. I found it wonderful. I was always more interested in how something was constructed. I was that kid that would sit and watch the tile guy do tile. I was a kid that watched a tree guy cut down the trees. I would watch them do it because I love anything that somebody does with their hands. Now, would I make a piece of furniture? No. But I really appreciate anything when somebody is doing something from their imagination with their hands to create things. Recently, I've been getting into watching restoration of old houses. It's the same thing, watching them tile. I find that really interesting. So anyway, so I've always had that kind of wonder, even as a kid, and I never lost it. I think that it's important to be able to look kind of out from who you are in your little world and see what is out there. And what I love about quilting so much is that the word quilting, fine art, is a huge umbrella where there's many different styles and there's always enough room for one more person under that umbrella. So I have become known for my painted art quilts, but I didn't start there. I made clothes, and I did also. In fact, my husband's here. He bought me my very first sewing machine, and he made me a Jansen like leotard set way back in the day. So he's always been real supportive of me being sewing. But that is where I began. And then I was making clothes for my daughter, and she was about first or second grade, and she basically told me not to make her any more clothes because she wanted to live wanted what everybody else had. Okay, talk about stab me in the heart. It was like, what? Because I never wanted to be like anybody else. I never wanted to be like anyone else. I liked having something different. So I quit sewing garments, and there was this void. It's the same time we moved to Texas, and we started this sewing group, which had all different kinds of sewing, from knitting to quilters to cross stitch. And we had one lady in that group that was a quilter, and she wanted to do quilting, and I said, no. I was that reluctant quilter. That was like, I did not want it. At 6 months, she's like, well, I want to make a quilt. We got to do a group quilt. And I'm like, I had this vision, and it wasn't me. I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And finally, I said, okay, fine, we're going to do it. So it was a round robin. So I learned to quilt doing a round robin quilt, doing borders. It only took one quilt, the first quilt, to kind of get me involved. I had this vacuum where I was needing creativity and quilting and making things with fabric. Okay, fabric, hello, and thread, and it was just right up my alley. So I was like, okay, so I made the first block, and for the first few quilts were all round robin quilts. And then I finally decided that I found out that I really liked applique. Applique was my thing. PC point, I could do it, but it wasn't bringing me joy. So I liked applique. So I have one of my first quilts hanging up, actually a couple of them that are 100% applique quilts that I made. One of them is for my daughter, another one I made, and it's a big floral one that was a Pat Campbell. So original quilts that I made were somebody else's vision, and I took their vision, changed it up a bit, and then made it mine. And then later on, when I started doing big format florals, is when I started using photography and using my own work. But it took me a while to feel enough confidence to be able to do that, because I was kind of lost for a while. I didn't know where I wanted to go, and I was making traditional quilts, and I wanted to take traditional quilts and bring color to them, and I did do that, but it wasn't quite hitting the spots where I wanted to hit. And it wasn't until I started doing large format flowers that I really caught in my stride, because I will say that George O'Keeffe is one of my big inspirations, as well a lot of the impressionistic artists like Van Gogh and Monet, where they use little bits of color, which is what gave me the ideas to do the little bits of color to emulate the photograph that is blurry but with a high focus foreground. So that is kind of where all that came. So I made my first quilt and finished it in 1995. So I've been quilting since 1995. But like I said, I've been sewing since I was 5 years old. And I love techniques. I'm a technique teacher. So I would take ideas from garments and place them into what I was doing. Because who sits at night trying to figure out a problem and it just runs in their head, all right? And then all of a sudden something goes ding. It's like, okay. But it takes a while for it to happen. But so I like to problem solve and peel back the layers on what you need to do first, and then second to create these items. Oops, sorry. I don't know if I even need this, it's a small enough group. So all of these quilts is not about immediate gratification. I like tedium to a degree. I can get lost in it. The 1 minute it's morning and the next it's night, and I've been so focused in on an area and I don't even notice it. I just kind of so these are not quickie quilts. They take time. The quilts that you're seeing right now are my 3 newest quilts. These 2 have never been seen. You guys are the first ones to see these in real life. I will be putting them into Houston hopefully next year, and they're going to Spain with me. I'll be teaching in Spain in March. But these here, just so you know, I started out with a large format in collage work. So every single piece of the flower was a cut-out template, and then all the different colors were put together, and I made this big pattern, you know, because no one told me I couldn't do it, so I just kind of figured it out how to do it. And so I made these big, large format flowers. And then I went to Houston one year, and a really good friend of mine, Judy Coates Perez, was teaching, and she was doing a painting class. I said, well, I'll try that. It's another technique, right? I did not know I could paint until I tried. So one of the take-backs is like, you never know what you can do unless you try. All information is good. You may hate it, say, okay, this is not my bag. Or you say, oh my gosh, this is wonderful, I can see all these different things. But if you never even try, you won't even know. You don't know what you're capable of unless you try. And the minute you say you can't do something is the minute you've already given yourself a defeat, a personal defeat. So always when you're trying something new, or it's like, okay, this is new. First of all, I'm gonna give myself permission to fail, because failure is just another opportunity for growth, right? So I'm gonna give myself permission to do that. And I'm not gonna, it's just a little piece of something, it's just a little something. But I'm gonna learn from that and then take that information and bring it on to the next one. So that's kind of how I live my life, you know, and especially in 2005, I was seriously ill. I mean, seriously, I got something called toxic shock syndrome. Does anybody know what that is? It's septicemia. So I was actually in the hospital for a long time, and I actually passed away. Had an out-of-body experience a little bit. And, but after that, and going through all of that, you know, we're not guaranteed tomorrow, right? So do what you're passionate about. Do what you find joy in. There's a lot, support the people that you love, but maybe that's not quite your thing. Support them. Like I would love to do fabric dyeing, but I don't have the space. So I'll just go support my friends who do fabric dyeing or do that. So, but do the things that you love to do and what you're passionate about, because then it's not a job, it's a fun thing, and you just feel fulfilled doing the things that you love to do. So anyway, so what I was going back is I started out in collage, which we'll talk about there, and then from there I took my painting class, found out I could do it. The day after I got home from Houston, I made my very first painted quilt. I almost wish I would have brought it, I didn't think about it, but I made that quilt and I was already stuck. I was already thinking, okay, 5 quilts down there, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that. But it was a whole cloth little coneflower quilt, right? And one of the coneflowers is, where is she? She made it. You want to show your coneflower quilt real quick? Sure. Inspiration, Home Depot. Photographs, Home Depot. The coneflowers all came from Home Depot. And this lovely took my class in Houston, and she actually finished one of her pieces. Nice. And that is one of the flowers that was in my very first quilt that I ever did. And I said, well, I can do it. I said, I'm going to gear it to people who've never done it before, because I didn't know I could do it. No one told me I couldn't. So why not try, right? So I did. So this was one of the first ones, and thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Anyway, so I love showing quilts. So I made that, and then I did the second quilt, the painted quilt, which I don't own anymore. And I was asking people, which one do you prefer? The collage quilts or the painted quilts? Everybody went to the painted quilts. I said, okay. First of all, they took a third of the time. I could paint something in a couple of weeks, where collage took me 6 months. And then all the quilting on top of that, plus collecting the fabrics. And it was like what I had in mind, I couldn't find the fabrics. So I was already starting to tint fabrics to create the imagery that I wanted at that time. So it was an easy jump for me to just say, instead of going to a fabric stash, I'm just gonna go to a paint pot, and then I can make any color I wanted. And I like that. And so that's where it started. And then I did raw edge, so there's a number of pieces out there that are raw edge and done on templates because all I had was 18-inch wide freezer paper as the substrate that I painted on, right? And the silk was on top of that. So there were all bits that all could fit on that, and then I created them as units and then brought them together as a quilt. So there's a number of them out there. And then I got the large 48-inch wide freezer paper, which I have now. So that took that step out of it, which was, work smart, not hard. And so that was nice to have the big freezer paper. And now my daughter has taken a lot of that freezer paper because I'm a new grandma. And she's already planning these ideas of where she can do art stuff. And I'm like, cool, we'll go into that. And so from then I went into painted quilts. All these quilts here, all my new quilts are all turned edge. So there's no raw edge anywhere. So every single edge you see is a turned, completed edge. And I turn it all prior to doing stitching. So it was done with a technique that I came up with using Misty Fuse. Because like I said, there was no directions, and I went to Iris of Misty Fuse. Does anybody know who she is? Iris she was the founder of Misty Fuse, and she lives in New York. And I said, Iris, there's a dahlia quilt out there. I said, I'm thinking about turning this instead of using fabric. I'm just thinking about using fusible to turn it. And I said, you think that would work? She goes, I don't know. Why don't you try it? I said, okay, I will. And the way I started thinking about that is, I told you I borrowed from my sewing experience. I was thinking about making pockets and plackets and how you do a lining and so it's nice and pretty. And I'm like, what if instead of using fabric, I used the fusible sheet? So I did. I have it on back. So now everything is turned because I just like that look versus anything coming loose. So all my recent work is all turned edge. Now another thing you might notice is it's stitched to death. It personally is my aesthetic. I like more is more. And it's really hard for me not to stitch more than you need. So to pull back is really difficult. But the early work, it has very little stitching in it, which was fine. But over time, I just added more and more and more. So can I touch my quilts? So if you see the backs, they're heavily quilted quilts. And you can come back and take a look at the backs of these if you want to. Another thing that I do that is really very time consuming, but it does owe to my mother, is I bury all of my threads by hand as I go. So I don't pack stitches. I'm talking about packing stitch, and then you go on, because that leaves that little lump. So I actually have my needle and thread, and I do a pass. Every stop and start is hand stitched between the layers. So my goal is to have the back look as good as the front in a different way. So it has a whole different art experience on the back side as it did on the front. But it took me a long time to have enough confidence in my stitching to have it solid back. So early pieces have pattern backs because you can hide stuff. But at some point, I had to say, okay, put your good big girl panties on. You've worked really hard. You need to show all the work that you're doing. And so I don't know how long it's been since I started doing solids, but now it was solid back. I also started using more and more and more bobbin threads, and to give that look. Now, why did I do that? Because I wanted to have this to have a look on the back as cool as the front, and then the early ones I would use maybe 8 different thread top colors for one bobbin thread. Now I switch them out every 2 to 3. So you have a really good color change out between the pinks and light pink, medium pink, dark pink, and those different colors in between, which gives even more of a impact on the back. You never see it in the front, but you see it on the back. And so, and my mom, she used to say we'd be doing the kitchen, and I never get, I'm cleaning the stove, and she'd come here and I'd miss something. She says, if you're gonna do it, don't do a half-ass job. Do it again. It's like, so that's always in my head, right? So no matter what I'm doing, I have to try to do the very best that I can do at that particular time in my life. And so a lot of the early works, I think, well, maybe I want to add some stuff. And I stop myself and say, no, that was the very best I could do at that point in my life. So it's a journey. It shows progression, right? And I'm not stopping. I'm ready. I'm still work in progress. I think until, I'm gone, I'm going to continue to create and make new things. And who knows, I might come up with another really cool idea and technique. I don't know. Well, we'll see. So anyway, so this one here is dogwood, and it's called The Promise. It's The Promise of Spring. I took everything's done with photographs, my photography. This was taken, it's a branch from a dogwood in Oregon. My mom is from Oregon. Oh, I should say that my mom is a master gardener of rhododendrons and azaleas. This girl cannot keep a plant alive. So I did not get that gene. I love the flowers. I like to see the fruits of her labor. But I cannot, I just don't have the time. My idea is it's in the ground, you're on your own. I mean, I really, the cultivation and tending, no, not really me. But it's my mom. So a lot of the quilts have to do with my mom. And this was in the neighborhood I grew up in, and there's dogwoods everywhere. And this particular dogwood, there's a lot of pink dogwoods, but this was the pinkest dogwood I'd ever seen in my life. So I had to have it. And so this is just a little end branch. The tree is somewhere over here. It was just the end of the branch. And it was very high focused here. And I made this quilt for that. I have reasons why I make it that interest me. To me, here, that and that right there was the whole reason why I made the whole quilt. This quilt here, I was interested in the variegation, but I was really more interested in the leaves. The leaves are the highlight on this quilt for me. There's also a little praying mantis up here. He's this big. And this is a hydrangea. I'd never seen a hydrangea that had this variegated color. They were all one color, either blue or pink, because of the acidity of the soils. But I had never seen one with white edges that started out chartreuse white. And as it opened up, it became one color. And then as it aged, it became another color. I found that so fascinating. So I wanted to emulate that. This one here is called Poppy of the Pods. And I was interested in the pods. The poppy is the backdrop to the pods. How do you create texture on a two-dimensional surface trying to create a 3D look? And initially, I was going to quilt in between all of those spikes. But I didn't, as I started sewing the spikes down, I said, I'm going to lose all that texture if I added that. So that was one of the pull back. And I was like, oh, great, that just saves me a whole bunch of work. But it was stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. But I think that the texture of the poppy pods really did come out, especially in the leaves and in the stems. So anyway, these are the three. Oh, the other thing I wanted to do on this one is I wanted a solid black background, but I didn't want to use this one piece of fabric. So these are all batiks that are black in different, somewhat shades. It reads as solid, but it's not solid. So it still has the texture and the sumptuousness that I like in a quilt in this. So this is my brand new one. I just literally finished it. Doesn't even have a label on it yet. This one has a label. I was hoping to put it in an Akima show, but they changed the sizes again, so it doesn't fit in any of the categories. So it's kind of an orphan at the moment, but I will find places for it because I love it. Anyway, so that is me in a nutshell. I do teach, but I'm ending my teaching career at the end of 2027, mainly because I have to have both of my knees replaced, and I'm not going to schlep my quilts all over the world. So I teach like 2 to 3 times a year. So I'm not a prolific teacher person. I just teach when I want to teach. But if you're interested in taking a class from me, do it sooner rather than later. I am teaching at Empty School Seminars in Monterey, California. And that's going to be in April. There's spaces available. In New York, next summer, I'll be teaching in Mid-Hudson Valley for a week. And I will, we're on Mackinac Island, that's in 2027. That will be up in Michigan. And then over with David Taylor at New England Quilt Seminars in Waterford Valley. So at the moment, that's where I'm kind of planning, and then at the end, I'm going to be done because 2028 is the year of the knee. One and then the other. So anyway, before we go out and look at the quilts, does anybody have any questions for me here? Okay, well then let's have about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll meet at this end, and we'll just kind of work our way around the building. How does that sound?
That sounds perfect. Before everybody leaves, let's give away door prizes.
Oh, do you want me to?
You want to draw? Okay.
No favoritism allowed.
Dripping.
Oh, here, Put it back in.
This is for a Texas Quilt Museum porcelain ornament.
Okay, there. This is for Elaine Morgan? There you go. Did I say that right? Morgan, okay. Do that one then.
And then the next one is for a Texas Quilt Museum bag.
Oh, jeez, okay. John
Paul.
John Paul.
It's all hard names here.
It's a flower, dear.
Yes, it is a flower.
Because your handwriting's not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I also wanted to tell you, a lot of the quilts are for sale. If you wanted to take one of my pieces home, it would not hurt my feelings. Mary Seville.
Mary Seville. Mary, this is for a supporter membership to the Texas Quilt Museum. So if you'll complete that and bring that to the front desk, then you'll get a free membership.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so you want to take about a 5-minute break?
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, yeah, let's take about a 5-minute break, stretch your legs, and then we'll just move to the front, and then I'll just walk around, because like I said, every quilt has a story. And I just want to again say thank you for wanting to come and spend the afternoon with me, and I recognize some people back there. And it's spending the afternoon with me and learning about my quilts and what I do. It's truly a labor of love for me. I enjoy it. As my husband would say, I go in the cave and I never come out. You know, I just really enjoy my time creating. So thank you again. I appreciate it so much. And we'll see you in about 5 minutes or so. Are not in chronological order. So some of them, this is a painted piece. This is one, remember I told you about ones are in units? This one is done in units because I only had freezer paper that was 18-inch wide. So this was a unit here, this was a unit, and you know, I break it all down, and then once all the parts were done, then I brought it back together. Fused it all together because there was fusible lead behind all of this. At this time I didn't know about turning it, just so it was all covered with misty fuse on the back. And I created this huge applique, and then the background is created around the applique. So the applique is first, the background comes second. And all this background on this particular quilt, this is already Tim's hand-dyed fabric. And what I found is you cannot be afraid of changing things up. Initially, the whole background was this dark purple color, including down here. And I would go on top of my staircase and look down, and I'm like, I don't like that, something's missing. I ripped out all the confetti, and I took these colors from over here and brought them over here.
So the idea is to have your eye going in the whole picture, not be focused on one particular thing, but have your eye move around the quilt. So I think by changing it up, I wasn't married to it. Okay, I wasted a little bit of fabric. I put it all in a baggie. I've used it over the years in different parts. But it still has the same, and it's all hand-dyed fabric on this particular piece. Now, when I make a confetti piece, generally I use a batik, high pima, high thread count fabric. The more the merrier. Like some of these quilts have 60, 80 different batiks. I have a very large batik section. I cut it in 3-inch strips, and then I can pull out what the colors, and I create a palette from those. So if I have a green, there might be 20 greens. There might be different ones that come in, but if I use 1 or 2 colors, it starts looking cartoony and like a circus kind of thing. And I didn't want that. I wanted to have those diffuse colors of nature that come in. Did I tell you I was a biologist? I wasn't allowed to be an artist growing up. My dad was a dentist and my mom was a medical technologist. And I've always been an artist, and I was told I couldn't be an artist, so I became a biologist. A very mediocre biologist, by the way. But that's what I did. So I was a natural history junior wildlife biologist. One reason why I do realism. My aesthetic is more towards realism. But anyway, but I wanted to have those little bits of color the way that Monet, where you get the view, but it's not total. You get that dimensionality. So this one here is called Escarret. I took this picture of this, or Phalaenopsis, or butterfly, or moth orchid, and I took this in Mexico. And a little thing about this quilt is that I learned, don't use a heat gun when you're trying to dry something. You can burn the silk. I had a piece I had to redo because I burned silk. That made me sad. But like I said, failure is opportunity for fabulousness. So learning from my mistakes. So I let air dry and I blot stuff. But this one here, I was doing multiple layers. When I quilt a quilt, they don't look like this initially. I call it the fugly stage, where it's light layers. So there's a very fine layer and then another layer, and I build the color throughout with each layer. And every time I'm picking from the paint, I'm picking it slightly different. So you get these subtle nuances of tone. So it's not smacked with one color of red or one color of yellow. There's multiple layers with, sometimes the yellows will have a little more brown, sometimes they're gonna have a little more orange, sometimes they'll have a little green. But all of those different colors in a transparent layer on top of each other. And that's what gives the luminosity and the realism of the pieces. So this quilt probably had about 6 passes on it. As I've gotten it, I do generally 3. I do the base coat, then I do a final coat, then it goes into timeout, then I do an all over. I look at everything critically and do a fine tune before, and they always go into timeout. So, because too much togetherness, you miss stuff, you need to have fresh eyes. So this is Escarret. Okay, I have in my entire collection, there's 3 quilts that I did not take the photographs of. This is one of them. My daughter Samantha took this photograph at my niece's wedding. And this is called Three's Company. And is it talking? Yeah. Okay. I loved how these are black-eyed Susans. They're not actually sunflowers. They look like them. But this one, I liked how it was kind of pushing down. And if you notice, there's a bee up here working really hard, and then there's pollen down here on its leaf. This is another one of my early pieces. It was the first one I tried to do as a landscape, as a background for confetti. So I wanted to try to create the trees and the bushes and the thing through confetti. So this is another one of the templated ones. So each one of these was its own little piece. And this is from the early one. So yes, there's a pattern back. So this is called Three's Company. And yes, my daughter took the photograph for this one. Okay,
so this one is highly sentimental to me. It's not my favorite quilt of all the big things I've made. It's probably Icelandese is my favorite. But this one is nevertheless just as important to me. This quilt is called Passiflora, Find Joy, Live Your Passion. Find your joy, live your passion. But it originally was going to be called, And You Thought You Had a Bad Hair Day. So this quilt here is a whole cloth quilt. It was it was just a fun quilt to make. I had to figure out how I wanted to do all the squiggly things with the passion flower. Initially, the photograph that I was using, this whole area is a blank slate. And I felt like it needed something, so I went back into my photographs, grabbed another photograph, hand drafted all of this. This is my Ode to Jungle book. But I wanted to have those elements in there, and my photograph that I was using did not have them. So if it doesn't work, you find some way to make it work. And so this is a compilation of 2 photographs in my imagination. And so it is a whole cloth quilt. You can see the quilting on the back. And the reason why it's called Passiflora, Find Joy, Live Your Passion is this was in timeout. I told you I put everything in timeout for a while. During that period of time, my father passed away, and then COVID happened. So this is a COVID quote. So this came out after all of that, and so I was thinking about my dad a lot. He was very much a philosopher and things, and you know the title is an ode to my dad because he was always live your passion, do what you love to do. And he did apologize for me not letting being an artist because you can't take it out of you. It's you. So that is why this is called Passiflora, Find Joy, Live Your Passion. And I love this one, and I know this a lot of people love this one too. It needs to go to Happy Home. Okay, Beauty and the Blues. This is a turned edge applique. This is a true blue iris from the Shriner Iris Gardens in Salem, Oregon. That's where I was born and raised, Salem, Oregon. And they have Shriners. They sell bulbs and irises everywhere, you know, to the world. What interested me in this quilt was the deadhead. I love the whole idea when you're making quilts of a certain of life, right? Life as the beauty, but all parts of it have their beauty in them. So I was interested in the deadhead and the frilliness, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted on the background, and this background is the first light background that I ever did. And remember I told you how you make your eye move around? So if you start, it starts in this kind of brownish tone, goes really light here, turns yellow, then becomes more blue, back into a tan, and then back into dark. So it has a cyclic content to it. And the other thing is, on this piece, a lot of these cities didn't exist. I just made them up. Because I know what they're supposed to look like, and I wanted those acid tones to correspond with the blue, minty tones, and I felt like it needed to have that to anchor the whole branch. So this, and the other thing I did on this is I gave it a 3-dimensionality with the beards. Originally they were flat, and it was like, oh, I don't really like that. And I was walking around the craft store, and you know that Santa stuff that you put for Santa hats? And I looked at that like, that would work. So I went and bought some of that, and then I took my pinking shears and cut it down to the nub and put it up there and auditioned to see if I liked it, which I did. So I took each one of them and I cut them to size and hand appliqued each of these beards onto this piece. So this is called Beauty and the Blues, and it's still one of my favorite pieces, and it was a lot of fun. I love the movement it created with all the frilly ruffles. Last collage quilt I ever did, the man said, which one do you like better? This is the one I was hand tinting all the colors. This is actually a white hibiscus. There's no such thing as white. I found that out really quick. It's all shades of pinks and greens and whatever that particular piece was. And I could not find all of the grays that were out there were blue. Did not work. So I had to create my own fabric. So I took like basic colors of fabric, and then I had a spray bottle that I tinted with black. And I put more and more black, and I created the different colors to create this piece. And this piece, just to make this, took me like 6 months to do, without quilting it or anything. And then you have to sew all the pieces down, and anyway, I love this. Hangs over my mantle at home generally, and I do love it. But it's the last collage quilt that I made before I switched over to doing painted quilts.
Are you using a domestic?
Oh yes, I am a domestic diva. I use a domestic, Bernina and Janoni. Our early stuff was Bernina, and then I switched over to a Janoni. Sit down, I'm in fabric under the needle. I do not use a stitch regulator, and I just have the music on, and I just get in the flow. So I'm afraid to try to do driving machine on a long arm, because I'm thinking that I might lose my skill. It's like you get into the weeds of somewhere in between the two, and I have to buy a new house to have a long arm, so I'm able to do this.
So you have to stretch your quilt you're working on when you're doing
No, actually, it's usually wadded up and scrunched here and there and folded over. And I just work in small areas as long as what's under my needle is flat. Now, I base my quilts and I stabilize all my quilts prior to it. And when I'm doing, like for example, a good segue for this one. So when I'm doing a big piece like this, I have to quilt all the confetti first, because you can imagine the nightmare that would happen.
Yeah.
That would leave all this extra space, and the confetti is not underneath the applique. And there's only the birds of the feather it is, but for the most part there is no confetti. It's just tucked under each of these edges. So I have to quilt all that down first so it doesn't move, and then from that point I go and I base stitch these pieces along. I don't do them linearly, in a grid. I will sew in a big basting stitch here, and then here, and then I will work from the center out towards the edges. Because if I have to lift and shit and remove and reposition, I can do that. Because I don't want ripples and lumps on the back of my quilt. And they do not have that, because I paid really close attention. And they're done in a big basting stitch, and I pull them out as I get to them, so that it's all held in place. So there's so much preparatory work before I ever get to actually do the fun stuff with the stitching. But all that prep work that I don't necessarily want to do, I still have to do them. I've just resigned myself that it's part of the process. You got to do the stuff you don't like to get the result that you want in the end.
What stabilizer are you using?
On the back of these is Miss Diffuse, and that is it. The quilt itself is made up of multiple layers. It's made up of a back, right? I use 2 layers of batting. I use cotton against the back. I use wool, which I like dream wool because it's smooth and flat and there's no lumps, and I use dream wool. So 2 layers of batting, which is, I don't buy it for loft. I don't use it to give dimension. I use it for structure, because between the silk and the cotton, when I steam set them, they're not dunked in water. They're steam set. When I set all those fibers and the stitching, they just lock everything in. That's why these are bone straight, because they have the structure to support the amount of quilting, and the quilting is also adding to the structure of this. These are not meant for, if I was doing a bed quilt, like that one up there, it would not have half the stitching on it. It wouldn't even have an eighth of the stitching, because I want the loft, I want it to move. But on a wall, I want it to lay flat. And you have to have even stitching throughout the whole piece to have it lay flat. So this one is, yes, it's Stitchitis. This is Augustini. This is a true blue non-hybrid rhododendron from China.
It's sitting in my mom, because she's a master gardener. So this was in my mom's yard. This is her, it's an ugly plant. It's all about the flowers, it's spindly, it's not very pretty. But when it's in bloom, it's amazing. So this one is Augustini. This is another one of the hybrids quilts that took some of my imagination, plus, let's see, add three. The initial quilt was just these here, and this flower, right there. And maybe one of these, I can't remember. But I thought it wasn't enough, so I know what they look like, right? So I know how the leaves go down. So I added some leaves. This came from another photograph, because it's all empty there. And honestly, I was like freaking out about having to turn all these edges. So I'm like, let's make myself a little easier. So I made it so I didn't have to turn all the edges. So this is a new spire that's coming up. This is completely made up. There was no photograph. I just knew what it's supposed to look like. It had an elbow bend. I put another elbow bend in. I made the leaves that worked together to create the whole image. So I wasn't like saying married. It's like, oh, that I could only do what I'm seeing. No, it's I can do what I want. So that's what I do. It's like I do what I want to do, and these are all just emulating all the little block blooms that were in the background that gave the idea of the plant, but not necessarily the actual blooms. So this is Augustini, and it's an ode to my mama. A lot of my quilts are ode to my mama, and they came from her garden. She wanted me to make sure to tell her that they came from my garden. Okay, Mom, I will.
Can you tell us again how you fuse and turn the edges of the applique?
Okay, so the way I turn, if I'm using this, you get, okay, let me get one. I'll tell you about that one.
Okay.
Because it's easier to imagine. Let me tell you about this one first. This one, Quilts Inc. had a show in Portland, Oregon with the quilt stitch knit. And I'm from Oregon. And so I wanted to have a quilt because I figured it might be the only thing that my family would ever see, because I live out here and they don't fly. So this flower is actually taken from a photograph I took at Portland Rose Garden, Test Gardens up in Washington Park. And so it is a rose from Portland. And I was interested in the buds, but I loved the color changes between this real fluorescent orange that came and how it changed. A red rose would never work in making what I do, because it's all one note. You need to have multiple colors and things to give your eye. And this one definitely was a stretch, going from white to these deep dark colors. So this is what was made for that, and it's another confetti. I didn't really have a background in mind. I just wanted to have it green. So I just kind of did an all over kind of green thing with some browns and stuff in it to emulate dirt and things where stuff was popping through. But the question was, how do I turn the edges? So imagine this one big piece of silk that's white and it's painted. It's done. So what I did was I covered the whole thing on the front side with the fusible web. And what I use is Misty Fuse, but there's also the Pellin product. It's just spun glue on a sheet without the paper. And I laid it over the top, and I literally stitched with white silk thread, and this was stabilized on a big piece of freezer paper, so it wasn't moving around. But I stitched the outside edges, and then I turned it like an envelope, so all the edges were trapped underneath with the Misty Fuse, and I carefully, with a bamboo skewer, just carefully turn around and clip the edges so that they would turn nicely. And with Misty Fuse, it's not for the faint of heart. It's really tender, and it's easy to put holes in it, so it's not a quick thing. So I would leave it until I got to it, and then I pulled off the paper just to unclip it and then turn it. But that's how this was completely turned. So it was turned like an envelope, and so I have these huge Teflon sheets. So once it was turned, I could heat set it down on the Teflon sheet, and always have a cover on your silk. You never put an iron over painted silk. So I had a cover on it, and that
fused the fusible to the silk and trapped all those edges underneath and kept it. So then the whole thing was then, now I could pick the whole thing up and I can audition. I can make my background as big as I wanted. The only parameter is, on this quilt, was the bottom. I had to have it go to the end. Everything has to make sense, right? So on this quilt, it was just the bottom. But I could have made this as big or as I wanted to. But I didn't. I liked it this size. This hangs in my dining room. I missed you. I missed you a lot. My house is really, really, really bare right now.
I'm going to keep asking questions.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So what type of dye are you using for your paint?
I am using on my personal quilts. My personal quilts. I use a number of different brands. I started out with Color, PBO Color. It comes from France. Okay, so if that's, and I use Jacquard, and I use Pro Chemical and dye. So that between those three brands, I can get most of the colors that I want.
Are you having to add a gel or what?
No, I use that. They have a extending medium that comes with that particular paint, and then I created a solution on how I treat and prime the silk. Like I said, there's a lot of problem solving that had to come in, because you can't just put paint on raw silk. It will, I guess. You have to have a substrate or something to prime the silk, like a gesso on a that will accept the paint without it going crazy. So the sizing that I use is a mixture of the extending medium and a couple other things in water, and I have to prime or size the silk prior to any paint, and then all of that mixture gets through with the silk pieces, settles, because there's a piece of freezer paper under there stopping it to go through. And then as it dries, all those nooks and crannies within the silk are filled. So I just took away a lot of the pathways for potential nightmares. It doesn't stop the bleed 100%, but it puts you as an artist in control. So I can still treat it as a watercolor if I wanted to, or I could treat it as an oil or more solid, the way I wanted to.
Don't you have to set the dye after you're done with the painting?
It's paint, so it's not dye. So once it's on and dried, it's basically set. But I do heat set everything anyway. Cover it so it's always heat set at the ends. So it has doubled. It's not coming off. And these are very, very fine layers, so it's not cakey. The hand actually is really good. So you can bend it and very malleable. But the reality is paint is plastic. You are laying a layer of plastic in your quilt, into your piece. So the idea is less is more. Do the least amount of work to get your best benefit, and use the least amount of product to get the job done. Going overboard, it could cake and it'd be a big mess, and then it's just going to look like a picnic tarp. And you don't want it to look like a picnic tarp. You want it to have that movement. So early pieces, these are things I learned, like from the earlier stuff on less is more, and that's how I do it. These quilts here, this one is what I'm currently teaching right now. And so I just thought, why not? These will never get to be seen by, so I put a lot of my teaching quilts here. So this is called Busy Bee. It's also turned edge. It has a really cute little bee in there. Obviously confetti, turned edge, appliqued. Not a lot to say on that one. This is one of my collage pieces. It's actually one of my most favorite pieces. I put the beads in, the stain in here. Every piece here is a different piece of fabric to create this image. Again, the idea of old and new. I just love this piece. Here's your new. It's in full glory. This is called Glory. And here is the piece, and it was just open, so it was kind of round. So this is Glory. Another one, let's see, this is Home Depot. You get your inspiration, you find your flowers, except I can't keep anything alive. So I go in the spring when everything is perfect and take the photos. So I have libraries of photographs of different things. So this is Glory, and I added the beadwork in here. This one I taught at Rhode California last year. Probably won't be teaching this one again. Like I said, I made the decision to retire from teaching. So
This one is a begonia out of my mom's yard. It's a little, she had different kinds of begonias. These look like little, so it's a little peachy pink begonia. And you can see, I mean, it's quilted to death, you know, I can't help myself. I say I have stitchitis. I mean, it's an incurable disease, but I'll take it. So this is begonia swirl. So this is only one of my teaching pieces, and this was just done in 2025, so it's newer. This one is the first quilt that I made in large format flowers. It's actually in the Texas Quilt book that Katie and Nancy put together in 1980. I forgot, but for some big, I think it was a 35-year thing for Houston Quilt Festival. This one, as well as Three's Company, and one I don't have that it's sold. But this one here was the very first quilt that I did after I started thinking about these large format flowers. And it was this one here. So you can see the quilting is, you see the change, right? First of all, the background. Well, we actually use it. The stitches are big. I was just formulating how to do it. I didn't have a clue. I was just going, you know, it was coming very organically. Because I didn't have, but I love my background with this. And I love this is a dahlia, it's called Dahlia Delight, and it was from my mom's yard. So, that's that. I have a lot of them. Okay. Also from my mom's yard. This is Stargazer Splendor. I wanted a quilt that read summer and spring and fun, because I do a lot of dark backgrounds, so I wanted to have a lighter background with all these spring greens. Again, with the same idea of having things move, so there is colors and then depth, and then it changes around. But when I blew this up and make it, see that little guy here? I originally was thinking about calling it a peekaboo, but I decided not to. I made this quilt specifically for these anthers and this. This was the backdrop, because this is where I wanted to focus my attention to, and this is where my learning came from, how to create pollen that has that super texture fit on a two-dimensional image. So this is Stargazer Splendor. I love this quilt too. Like I said, I love them all for all different reasons. This is my daughter's quilt. That's called Summer Solitude. This is another quilt that she took the photograph from. This is kind of a hybrid. This is actually, if you notice, the bee has wings there made with organza and Indian sandwiched in there is Angelina fibers. So they come, and so here's the shadow of the bee coming down. This one, I made it after that, so everything I learned from that, I used in this one here, and I love this cerulean blue. Now, this was shown in New York City in big, huge, they had an art thing called See Me, and it was shown on the New York buildings one night in this huge art exhibition show that I was journeyed into. So this got its 15 minutes of fame in New York City on one of the big walls, or big buildings in New York City. So I think that was kind of cool. This is called Bugs View. This is when I was formulating ideas on big stuff. Now there, comb flowers from Home Depot, playing with the different colors on the back. So that was this. My first national win, right here. It won in Paducah. It won the best stationary machine workmanship award, as well as it got me a sewing machine in MQX. It is whole cloth on this side, the turned edge on this side, so it has a little bit of both. And what's interesting to me in this piece, this is a clematis and the same at the Iris Gardens. But the photograph in all of this, you couldn't see any detail. You saw white and black.
you couldn't see any of it. So a lot of this I made up. Or changed the values so I can at least see some of the shape, and then I hand drew out and created that. But I did a lot of research on what clematis leaves look like and all different things, so I keep the botanical aspects true. So this one here, and it's, I love this one too. Yeah. And then Andrea, she got this one here. This one's not for sale. It's sold.
She has my same name, so, you know.
Yeah, there we go. So this one here is another turned edge applique with more of a landscape background to it. And I love this one. Now this one doesn't have the beards that are fuzzy. This one was actually a painted beard on it, which was fine by me because it wasn't just a white block. It had some texture to it. So this one is Iris Garden from Schreiner's Irish Farm. Iris Farm. This also came, I took this photograph at the same time. This is spectacular, this scarlet. I only had a piece of silk this big. I painted it up to this point here, that was all I had, but I had this space down here. So what am I going to do? I'm going to create a new thing. So I created all of this too, and then a little bit of this here. So I created all of that and came down and made all the spires. Again, completely turned edge. This is a piece of Jamie Wong's hand-dyed fabric. So this is one of the few pieces that I paid attention to by quilting to make sure that all the feathers were just right. But I'm not really a feathery kind of gal. It doesn't really work in my stuff. But it was okay. It was okay. So anyway, this is spectacular in the scarlet. And you know, it's funny how many colors are in irises. Depends on, you know, when I walked through this farm that had all these tests of dozens and dozens of different irises, the different colors going from pure blue to white to yellow to pink to purple. They were everywhere, corals. You know, so I could do a lot of iris quilts, but I don't want to, you know, overwhelm myself with iris quilts. But I love them. I think that they're just really beautiful. They don't smell very good though. But they're really pretty to look at. This is Daylily Dream. This one was actually one I did to study color. I wanted to create a piece where I didn't use white paint. I wanted the silk to be the white. So all the white around the edges here is the color of the silk. And I did multiple washes from this point down into the center to give that. So this has many, many layers of super light paint that was laid on top of each other. But when I talk about the luminosity, you can really see how those change from these hot bubblegum pinks to more of the orangey, corally pinks down into the deep reds. So this was a study that I did for myself to play and to understand the color. It's one of my really early works. It's another one that I did with, you know, big units. This is before I had big freezer paper. So that is this one. It's a completely different look than that one over there. This one was done in 2011. So it was a real early work. I just call it Daylily Dream. I am currently have another one of these coming, but it's 3 times the size, actually about 4 times the size. And I will quilt it almost identical to this because it's where you need to have the relief to give the puckering. This also came from Home Depot before, yeah, you know, because I can't keep it. And there's beads in here. There's sparkles in here, which was, well, you know, anybody know what bone ash is? The little granulated glue stuff. Yeah. So I put that in there and I foiled on the glitter. So that's all this here to give it nice ice crystals for winter. What I was interested in this quilt was the changeover from red to green and how they changed. So, but I didn't really have a lot of it. But my new quilt, which someday I'll get it done, really shows that. But here's just the beginnings of it, changing from green. Again, here you'll have the veining is done in red.
because it's changing into this real beautiful piece. So this is my idea of a Christmas quilt. So I'm going to do another really big one and put it on above the mantle. So and this is raw edge. One piece of silk, raw edge, so it was all cut out with the beads. Turned edge, my sister's chilies in my mom's yard. My sister's name is Jeannie, her nickname is Jeannie Beanie, so this is Chili Beanies. And these are her peppers that she grew, and she was so proud of growing these peppers. And so I wanted something from my kitchen, so this is it. I probably will give this to her sooner rather than later, so let her enjoy it. But I'm enjoying it for right now. So this is Chili Beans, and again, you can see the stitching on the back. And this was done 2020, so it's relatively a new piece. And this is what I call a gradation piece, dark, changing out to light.
So what I like about that is just how close all of those red threads are in each pepper.
Yes.
So close.
They're very, yes, the thread is as much, what I think about when I'm quilting a piece is when I paint it, that is, it's awesome, right? It looks great. But the thread is what gives it its life. It's what gives it its personality. It gives the charm. It gives everything to it. And I do have the problem with stitchitis. So yes, but I love the look of that. So it becomes my aesthetic on what I do. But thank you. I love that too. I love that too. And there's many color changes in here to do these things. So big quilts have over 200 threads. Colors of thread, and big ones, and the smaller ones can have up to 100. So they have a lot of thread, but that all plays together to create the whole piece. And I could just do a few. I had one student, they take it, they say they did it all one color, and then they painted the threads, or tinted their threads so they wouldn't have to change the thread. Okay, you can do that because it's your quilt. You can do whatever you want on your quilt, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change the threads out because I think that, it's part of my process, but it also, I think it adds and elevates a quilt to have that extra bit of TLC that each one of them has. Now this one is a total fantastical piece. The only thing that is even remotely real is the birds of paradise and the heliconia, and these were just, higgly-piggly. I knew what anthurium looked like. The entire quilt back was quilted first. This was a very early piece, so I made the whole back, and then I laid it on top. Could you imagine turning every single little area there? I couldn't even imagine. It wasn't even in my ether at the time, right? I was just creating for the sake of creating. This is right after I started stitching again after a 2-year hiatus from not being able to be in front of my machine because of PTSD. So this one was where my love of color and fabric and wonder came back to me. Before then, it was I'd go in front of the machine. I couldn't do it. I was making baby quilts at the time. I literally start shaking. I couldn't be in front of the sewing machine because it brought back all the bad stuff. But this one helped me break through that. So this one is, my husband and I went to Hawaii for our honeymoon. So this one is called Birds of a Feather. And it's also a raw edge collage piece. And I love it. Okay, these are all teaching quilts. This one I'm going to be doing in Spain, empty spools. This was Road to California. This one I decided I'm not teaching anymore because it was just really hard with the reds. I thought that it would be pretty simple being all one color, but it actually turned into be a lot harder than and more complicated for my students. And I decided that we're not going to do that one again because I love it, but it was more of an intermediate, and I try to gear all my classes to beginning people that have never done it before. And my adage in classes is I only have 2 requests. You learn something and you have fun. I rather have you just sit and listen and enjoy, because it's the projects bring you, just like now, the projects are bringing you here, right? But what's important is the community. It's the relationships that you build with the people around you. That is more important than a project where I give you all the information and you can go home in your house and go through it yourself. I'd rather have you have fun and share ideas and laugh and, get to know your neighbor than worry about how to paint, because that will come, because I give very detailed instruction on how to do all of that. But anyway, these are some of my teaching pieces. And so I thought, well, they never get seen, so they're going to be seen because this is nice to be able to see them. And then up here, let's see, Blue Anemone was the first big win in Houston. It won the Thread Master Award for Thread Arts. Some Desert in Spring, the cactus, is the other really big one from Houston. It won the Master Award for machine artistry. So these two are the big wins for Houston. That's the quilt that has won the most awards right there, the yellow one, or the orange begonia. Made that one for the leaves. But as far as if I look at every quilt and what they've won, that one is definitely has won the lion's share of all the quilts. And Rhodey has won quite a few too. My Rhodey up there is a rhododendron from the rhododendron farm, Crystal Falls Rhododendron Garden in Portland. I was visiting there with my father before we found out he had Parkinson's dementia. I didn't know we knew something was wrong. He knew it was wrong, but he wasn't letting us know. But he went in there and he surprised me. He knew the names of all these different rhododendrons. I thought that was my mother. I didn't think my dad could really surprise me. He totally surprised me. So when I look at that quilt, I think of my father and my mother, but mainly my father, because I was with him before his mental decline. And that was a special one. I made it for the buds that were opening up. But my Rhodey is for that one. And there's a story on that one too. Okay, it's all finished. I remember I told you I did some touch-ups. There was an area I was looking. It's all finished. Had a green paint pot. Caught my sleeve, popped over, landed in the confetti. I was wash it, get it wet, pull out the paint, pull out the paint. I was able to stop. It was finished. I was just doing some minor things that I needed and it hit my sleeve. So note to self, you never wear sleeves that have hanging things. And it's happened again on the quilt I'm working on right now, so I didn't even listen to my own advice. So it's like, now, never. It has to be tight or, no. But anyway, so that's my Rhodey. Let's see, this one's my ode to my mom. This one is ice lilies that came from my mother's yard. And it was a study on smooth versus rough. The smoothness of the leaves, I made it for that stem going all the way up. But behind the stargazer is my great-grandmother's snowball bush. And it had very tight, very green, evergreen, very serrated leaves, very textured leaves. So I was interested in playing with the smooth and the rough, on how to create the smoothness and the texture. So in the lily, there's spines that come up from the center down like this. In between, for continuity, in between each of those leaves, no matter what the size of the leaf was, there's 3 lines of stitching. So big leaves had it wider, smaller leaves narrow. So no matter what, it always had 3 layers in between the spines. And then on the serrated edges, everything was done like spider goes out and then it breaks and it breaks and it breaks and comes out kind of. Does anybody know what an alluvial fan is? Like when you're flying going to the mountains and you see these rivulets from the water that comes down and it takes a big, and then it breaks and then it breaks and it breaks and it breaks.
how I think when I'm doing certain types of veins on my pieces. So it has that look. So it's generally they're linear or very broken out. So the ones at the end, there's like many veins, but it comes up to a central area. And so that's how I put together that one. Okay, early piece before I did any painting. This is the first piece I quasi-designed. It's done. It's called Jungle Fever. All the little parts are fussy cut, so they all have the same little bits. The stars came from a friend of mine named Jenny Raymond, and so I took her ideas of the stars and made that kaleidoscope kind of thing like Paul of Maidstone, but not really. But it's all fussy cut, and then I hand drafted the medallion twice because it didn't work right, because I was so afraid they'd say that it wasn't mine, so I kept the hand draft for forever. And then there's embroidery in there, and then the rope work is kind of inspired by my Nordic roots. I'm half Norwegian, so I put in the vine work and everything, and then I did it as a color wheel. So that was my first kind of test into creating my own pieces. Not 100%, but it's about 80%. And then this one here is a fully 100% hand quilted and hand stitched quilt up there. It's a calendar quilt for my daughter. It's a Ryle and Pandolf design. It took me a year and a half to make, and by the time I got to December, I had to redo 3 blocks because I had learned so much from the beginning to the end. It just didn't look right, so I had to do it over, which kind of bummed me out, but on the other hand, it needed to be done. This one here, I was in a mood. I saw this and I need a bed quilt. I don't make a lot of bed quilts for myself, but this one is from Deborah. She's out of Australia. It's not my design, but I took it. The biggest one she had was a twin. I just grew it and then drafted that, took her the design and added the parts to it with the flowers. This one still needs some work on it. I sent it to a quilter and she was having tension issues, and that doesn't work for me. So I'm slowly taking things out and re-quilting it, but it's such a beast, and I don't know how. But I was like, well, it's a flower, so it's coming in. And okay, so over here, this is my first big win. I got a judge's choice in a first place in Dallas in the artisan division, and I was jumping up and down and I was shaking. I was so excited that it won something. It's 100% hand done, and Pat Campbell is the designer, and she is from Texas at the time, and she came up to me and gave me the biggest hug, and she said I did her proud. So I was really thrilled with that. So this one I made this year of 40, so it's called the Celebration of 40. And it's the last hand quilted quilt I ever did because I blew my hand out, got carpal tunnel, because I wanted to get it done in a certain time frame. And I just pushed myself to my body, just couldn't handle it. But that one is a real special one to me. It's a Jacobean design. And lastly, this one here is from Foundation Piecer magazine, and it had, you have to buy the magazines to get all the parts. Most of the fabrics in here are Valerie Wells from a line that she did many years ago, and I got it at the Stitching Post in Sisters when I went to the Sisters Quilt Show. And so it's called Nebula, and it is a burst of color. Can you tell I like color? But anyway, so that is my flower garden. Thank you so much for enjoying it with me. I will be, if anybody has any big questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. If you need to hit the road, totally understand that too. But thank you again, I really appreciate it. Thank you to the Quilt Museum for hosting this exhibition of my pieces. It is really special to me. It's the first time, first probably and only time all my pieces have been in one location hanging. I've had other exhibitions that are painted, but never where I had all of it. And so you really get to see the whole breadth of my work over the last 20 plus years. So anyway, thank you very much.